Fuck HIPAA. My new patient lives in a basement and the reason why definitely shocked me.
DisastrousInvolvedI.
Disclaimer, the content presented in this video is purely fictional and intended for entertainment purposes only. In the decade preceding the Civil War, multiple plantations and slave markets were plagued by deadly attacks perpetuated by a mysterious figure known as the abolitionist's hound. The first of these was the slaughter of an elderly lady and her adult son. Authorities discovered their bodies in a mansion alongside multiple other victims too decomposed to identify, as well as the remains of various animals such as wolves, pumas, and vultures. The string of attacks continued for 8 years, culminating in a massacre at a slave auction in Savannah. Witnesses claimed the killer was a chimeric demon with a small girl at its side. Some of the people being sold perished in the massacre. According to reports, the girl magically brought them back to life. She did not provide these ministrations to buyers or sellers. Based on the description of the perpetrator and the purported resurrections, the Agency of Helping Hands launched an investigation, contacting the individuals who had supposedly been brought back to life. Most wouldn't speak. The only one willing to speak insisted that the monster was no demon, but an avenging angel and the girl a miracle worker who must come to no harm. He then demanded proof that AHH was not affiliated with the Confederacy, which the agency provided. They promised that their goal was to protect both, at which point the man divulged what he knew. They located the pair. Immediately noting that the angel was not human, he had 6 large wings that appeared similar to that of vultures or condors. He had the head and torso of a man. His head had been mutilated and somehow fused with the snout of a wolf. His arms had been replaced with the legs of a bear. To the agent's surprise, he was perfectly docile. The child with him was friendly. She introduced herself as Senna and the Chimera as her brother, Ara. When asked about the massacre, she said, "They were just slavers. That's what we do to slavers." Personnel offered her safety if she agreed to come. She expressed concern for Ara. Upon reassurance that he would be as safe and cared for, she entered the custody of the Agency of Helping Hands. Senna has 2 characteristics of interest to the agency. First, her voice is soporific. She can sing anyone to sleep. Best results are achieved with her favorite hymn, "What Wondrous Love Is This." Second and most importantly, Senna's blood possesses extraordinary regenerative properties. It heals physical illnesses, reverses aging, and can usually reverse death anywhere from 2 to 24 hours after expiration, depending on the individual and degree of decomposition. It must be noted that her blood cannot reverse decomposition or damage in previously dead individuals. Additionally, the regenerative effects are not permanent, with the exception of her brother. All other patients must receive ongoing treatment. In appearance, Senna is a perpetual child. However, her cognitive abilities increase and decline in patterns consistent with typical aging. Senna has displayed symptoms of severe dementia 8 times since coming to AHH's custody, after which she devolves into a cognitive state similar to that of an infant, only for her cognition to redevelop consistent with normal child and adolescent development. At the time of this writing, Senna is cognitively 14 to 16 years old. It must be noted that overdrawing her blood greatly accelerates her cognitive decline. Cognitive decline does not affect the properties of her blood. With her permission, Senna is subject to frequent blood draws for the use by agency personnel and inmates, as well as an ongoing supply to a small, highly specialized pharmaceutical manufacturer. This supply is the most lucrative source of income for the agency. It should be noted that her brother, Ara, was long considered useless to operations and poses a significant danger to personnel. Despite the original promise, multiple attempts at destruction were attempted between the 1870s and 1980s, when current director Eric W. halted all termination plans and designed a specialized habitat cell similar to that given to Inmate 1, Ward 1, Numa. Senna is a black female who appears 10 to 12 years of age. Her diagnoses include major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, dyslexia, and anemia. In order to facilitate treatment, Senna lives in a secure suite in the agency's basement level. The below interview is the first account Senna has provided of her past. It should be noted that the agency's interviewer, me, attempted to resign her position immediately following the interview. Shortly after my resignation attempt, one of the agency's research subjects, Subject 58, Birdie, broke containment and attempted to assume control of my executive functions, which was arguably the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. While the research subject failed this and several subsequent attempts, it's basically haunting me right now and I don't know how to make it stop. For some reason, administration thinks this is my fault. Over the strenuous objections of both my interview assistant and the director, I'm confined to quarters pending disciplinary review. Interview subject, lifeblood, classification string, cooperative/destructible/gay and/constant/low/demon, interviewers, Rochelle B. Christoph W., interview date, January 28, 2025, on the day I brought the dead man back to life, Ara and I had been on the run for 6 months. We lived in the forest because the slave catchers wouldn't follow us there. They thought the forest was haunted, and they were right. There was the monster in the lightning-struck tree who whispered, "Give me your eyes and I will show you things you never dreamed if I got too close." There were the demons with the necks that stretched and stretched and stretched. There was the witch who sometimes told your future and sometimes fed you to her cannibal son. And then there was her cannibal son who hunted men like rabbits and took them apart and put their pieces back together in new, awful ways before eating them. And there was me, an abomination that defied death. I didn't feel like an abomination. I resurrected little birds by pricking my fingertips, and the foreman's cat by cutting my palm, and my cousin who died of pneumonia while I sat with him by slicing inside my elbow. I thought no one would find out about him, but Ara did. It was the only time he ever hit me. Then he hit himself for hitting me. You can't do that, Senna. Not with people. If they find out, they'll kill you or worse. They wouldn't kill me for helping, I said. Oh, yes they would. You're only a slave. If I'd kept to birds and cats and cousins, no one would have known I was an abomination, but the owner's youngest baby died. They had Ara and me prepare for the wake, Ara because he was the best cleaner, and me because they hoped I'd learn from him. It was sad and frightening to be in the room with a dead infant. I was so distracted that I cut my hand. I wonder how different my life would have been had I not cut my hand, while Ara rushed to find a bandage. I cried over the baby. How strange he looked in death, how small and empty with his one eye slitted open, glistening milkily. Eyes shouldn't glisten like that. Babies shouldn't be empty. I touched the baby and said a prayer, accidentally smearing blood on him right as his grieving mother walked in. She hit me so hard the world crackled into darkness before returning in a bright blur. My head was spinning, and a baby was crying. His mother made this sound, a keening gag. She reached into that little casket and picked up her baby, who was squirming. Not empty, but full and bright. And the way she held him, oh, the way she held him, I crept out as people came. An invisible little mite. Something unworthy. No, not even unworthy. Just not there. Only a slave, but word soon spread of the baby and his miracle worker slave girl. They set the entire plantation looking for me. I don't know what they planned for me. I never found out because Ara ran away with me that night. We'd been living in the forest ever since. The forest was the worst thing that ever happened to Ara. He'd never been well, but the forest with its monsters and magic made him so much worse. The night before I brought the dead man back, Ara wept for hours, crying that his face was growing a second skin of tree bark. It's going to grow all over me and I won't be able to move and keep you safe. It hurts. I asked him why it hurt. How could it hurt when there was no bark, when his skin was soft and clear as ever? His answer sent terror to my core. Because I'm crazy. He finally fell asleep after I sang. Singing was all that ever calmed him down, especially his favorite hymn, "What Wondrous Love Is This." I couldn't sleep. I only wanted to cry. I knew it would wake him up. He always woke up when I cried, so once the sun rose, I took a walk. It was a beautiful morning, all gold and copper and glowy bright. About 10 minutes in, I saw a little brown dog in the trees. He snarled and bounded forward. But his legs were bad, one collapsed and the others tangled together, sending him sprawling. That didn't stop him from charging again. I lost my balance and the dog lost its mind, tearing at my hands until I bled. I crawled away, wishing I could kick him but unwilling to hurt him. As my hand sank into something damp and hairy, I looked down and saw a mat of dull, dirty hair glistening in the sun. Below it was a smashed-in head leaking old blood. My own blood dripped from my bite wounds and mixed with it. It was a body, a dead man with no legs and only one arm. The little dog kept screaming, tearing my clothes and ramming against my knees as my blood dripped into the corpse's yawing mouth. Suddenly the body lurched up, gasping. Bloody shards of teeth glinted. Its sunken eyes looked so sad. So sad and so scared, the little dog wriggled forward joyfully and began to lick the ruined face as the corpse sucked in a tortured breath, expelling it in a broken garble. I knew it was trying to speak. "I'm sorry," I said. "I don't understand." It lurched up and brought itself down, trapping just enough air in its ruined chest to gurgle, "My dog. He's here. I'll take care of him." What remained of his insides glistened and bulged. "Help." I placed my hand on his forehead, hot and sticky and sickeningly soft. "I'll get help." "No." The sad eyes shone like dying stars, straining to the left. To a flat rock in the grass. "Help." A shadow fell over us. The little dog exploded into snarls as I looked up. It was Ara. He dragged me away. I gagged as my palm detached from the corpse's soft forehead, dragging strings of translucent rot. Ara picked up the rock. The corpse rasped, "Thank." Ara drove the rock down while I screamed and the dog squalled. The body fell still. "How did your blood get on him?" Ara asked. I didn't want to tell on the dog. "I hurt myself." Ara grabbed me. I barely had time to scoop the dog up before he marched me away. The world flew by in leaf-littered streaks of copper. Grass crunched as Ara muttered to himself. My hand hurt where the dog had bitten it. At least he wasn't fighting anymore. He hung limp and docile in my arms. When we reached the creek, Ara threw up. We hadn't eaten in 2 days. So nothing but bile and spit came up, glistening like the strings of decayed flesh that clung to my palm. Then he waded into the creek. "Get in here, Senna. Wash off. Wash that poor dead man off." I did. I brought the dog too. He didn't react, even when I jostled his hurt leg. After we bathed, Ami came. Ami was small and pale like the moon, with a blindfold that covered one eye. He never took it off. When I asked why, he said, that I sees the future, and the future is too sad to see. "What are you doing here?" Ara asked. Ara didn't like Ami because Ami made him feel crazy, just like the monster in the lightning-struck tree and the demon with the stretchy neck. But Ami wasn't like those things. Ami was good, Ami said. Senna's hurt. So is the dog. The bees can help. Ara hated the bees, too. Ara hated anything magic, bad magic like the lightning-struck tree, and good magic like Ami and the bees. But he hated me being hurt more. "Go on, Senna. Don't be long." I followed Ami along the winding path to the bees, slowing only when we heard a great, bone-thrumming drone. We stepped into their grove. The drone was deafening but beautiful, a deep and primal lullaby. A dozen hives, all dripping honey and all taller than I, adorned the trees. A great, lumbering bee drifted near. It was the biggest I'd ever seen, bigger than my own hand. Her eyes shone like suns in the coppery light. "Show her your bites," Ami said. The bee inspected them, then flew to Ami, who bowed low and went to the nearest hive. The bee watched as he swept up great handfuls of honey and slathered it on my hands. "This will heal the wounds and stop infection," Ami said. "It's not just any honey, you know." He bound the honey with leaves and tied it with grass, then turned his ministrations to the dog with his broken legs. "Now Senna, tell me why you smell of death." I told him about the dog and the dead man with no legs. "The witch's cannibal son did that," Ami said. "He's hungry. Why doesn't she stop him?" She needs the bones of his victims to make her garden grow, and their eyes to see the future. I thought of the lightning-struck tree. Give me your eyes and I will show you things you never dreamed. She can't stop him anymore. All the demons in the trees help him hunt. They feed on the pain of his victims. It makes them grow. It makes them strong. She can't even stop him eating the men who come to her house for help. Why would anyone go to her house if she's got a man-eating son? To learn the future. All those eyes. She takes them and by blood magic turns them into crystal balls. Some show the future. Others, you break open and drink what's inside to make your wish come true. She'll let you take any crystal ball you like if you pay her price with your blood. Only if her son takes a liking to you. He eats you and she still keeps the price you paid. Wishes. The witch grants wishes. I thought of Ara, scrubbing himself until he bled. Crying all night that his skin was turning to bark, that he wanted to die but was afraid of what would happen to me if he did, and of going to hell besides. Poor Ara who I'd cursed by being a stupid abomination. Well, why doesn't someone go wish her son wasn't a cannibal? I'll do it. You'll do no such thing. If the witch or her son learn of your blood, they'll trap you forever and make you work their wicked magic. But what if they don't? What if they grant me a wish instead? What if I wish to make Ara better? They'd never grant that wish. They're too evil. Everything about that witch and her house and her terrible garden and her man-eating son are too evil for anything good and bright, and you, my dear, are goodest and brightest. Just tell me where her house is. Never. Go back to your brother with your dog. Touch no more dead things. And tell Ara to move on. The cannibal's son is prowling, and slave catchers are near. I'll kill them if they try to catch me, I lied. That's what we do to slavers. But with the dismissal, I knew it was done, the magic that made Ara feel mad and made me feel I was in the presence of God. When I got back, Ara was having a bad fit, the kind where he sobbed until he coughed blood and he tore at his own skin. He stood in the cold creek scrubbing himself until his fingernails were blue and he was shivering hard enough to break his bones. I sang to him. His favorite hymn, What Wondrous Love Is This? It helped. It took a long time and I had to sing it 7 times, but it helped. Afterward, I said, we can find somewhere to go, Ara. There are abolitionist safe houses. No. No one's safe to you. Once they find out what you can do, you'll be a slave again. We stay out here where no one can hurt you. But it's hurting you. I don't care. That made me cry. I'm sorry. Don't ever be sorry, he said fiercely. They were going to drink your blood to fix themselves. One day they would have cut you into pieces and eaten you. Just like the witch's son. I would have gone to hell if I let them do that to you. I would have killed myself if I'd let them. I just want you to be happy. You're not. I'm sorry. I will never be sorry for anything I do for you. Don't you dare be sorry that I've done it. He finally fell asleep while I thought of the haunted woods and all the monsters. They were all real. So were all the stories. If the monster in the lightning-struck tree and the demon with the neck that stretched and stretched and stretched and Ami with his all-seeing eye and the bees with their magic honey were real, the witch who granted wishes must be real too, if she granted normal people wishes for their normal blood. What might she grant me for mine? I lay awake all night thinking of the lightning-struck tree and the witch who might tell the future or grant your wish or let her son devour you. Near dawn I drifted off and had a flickering dream of a decrepit plantation house, its rooms lined with shelves upon which clear bright crystals glowed. Behind them burned a pair of blank and hungry eyes. When I woke, Ara was in bad shape. He was trying to clean, and crying over how dirty everything was. I took over and made him rest. After I'd done what I could, I sat with Ara, feeling tired and guilty. A deer passed by. I want a cottage, Ara said. A little cottage on a lake that turns to ice in winter. A house with apple trees, where deer come to visit. A perfect little house where we'll be free and safe from slave catchers and monsters and everything else. I'm going to build it for us. That's our future, Senna. I promise. That made me want to cry. Even in his dreams, Ara couldn't stop worrying about me. Over the next few weeks, he got worse and worse. He spent hours each day trying to make our camp clean, but nothing is ever clean in the forest. He stuffed our bedrolls leaves and grass that he washed in the creek for too long, sometimes until they fell apart. Even before we ran away, nothing was ever clean enough for Ara. He'd sometimes scrub the same spot until he got beat. In the forest, he just scrubbed until he cried. Every day he washed himself in the creek until his skin was raw and he was shivering so hard I thought he'd die. Every night, he lay awake crying that his skin felt like bark. He said he wanted to die, only he was afraid of what would happen to me. I lay awake with him, singing his hymn and thinking of the witch and wishes. One night, Ara went fully mad, screaming and crying, scratching himself until he bled, begging God to either help us or kill us. Go, Senna, he screamed. Get out. Get away from me. Run. Ara had never told me to run, so I knew he was serious. Even though it was the last thing I wanted, I ran and ran. Following no path but instinct, that instinct led me to the lightning-struck tree and the monster shifting and slithering inside. I froze. I always tried to avoid this thing. So what had drawn me here? Hello, beautiful child, it whispered. Have you come to give me your eyes? No. Then why have you come? And right then, I knew why, because it was magic, bad magic, yes. But good magic never helped me. The bees couldn't help Ara. Ami wouldn't. And my own good magic got Ara trapped out here in the forest in the first place. If good magic couldn't help, maybe it was time to ask bad magic. I need help for my brother. I can't help without eyes. Neither can I. I felt it watching me. Spindly. Taloned fingers creep out of the borehole. Well, I can't take eyes that keep watch on someone who needs watching. But I can't help without eyes. Bring me someone else's. I can't. They might need theirs to watch their brothers too. Then bring my eyes. Aren't they in your head? No. The witch took them long ago. She keeps them in her house. They're green as a sunlit pond. Bring them back and I will help your brother. How do I get to the witch's house? I don't know. I can't see. With that, I went back to my brother. When he saw me, he shrank down on himself. I put my arms around him. I'm so tired, Senna. I want to die. Only I'm afraid of dying, and more afraid of leaving you. I was afraid of him leaving me, and more afraid of him dying. Ara deserved a long, happy, free life. A life where nothing was dirty. Where he had a cottage on a lake with apple trees and deer, a life with no fear of slave owners or bounty hunters or monsters. I knew, then, that I had to go to the witch's house. Ami must have read my mind somehow, because he came after I sang Ara to sleep. You can't do this, he told me. I can't even help you. The witch and her son and their garden are so evil I can't come within a mile of them. If you go in, you'll never get out again. You'll be all alone. Ara was all alone and he got me out. I can get back out for him. What if her cannibal son eats you? He doesn't eat girls. He eats men. Oh, Senna, he said helplessly. What will Ara do without you? He'll be free. Ami's tears soaked his blindfold and dripped like trails of stars. That's wrong. This is wrong. You've both been so wronged. No one but me is going to right it. Where is the witch's house? He told me, then spoke of a hidden path marked by the shattered pieces of crystal balls that had been broken to grant wishes. You glanced right over them if you didn't know what you were looking for, but if you did, the path was clear as clean water. I hoped my granted wish would join that path soon. Please don't go, Senna. Is Ara going to get better? You can see the future. Tell me. His lip quivered as he raised his blindfold. Underneath was something glorious. Love itself, and grief too, distilled into the most beautiful moon-colored eye. Tears coursed down his face, a river of starlight. No. And what happens if he doesn't get better? Everything you're afraid of. I felt a lump in my throat. Then I have to go. Make sure he stays asleep till I'm back. You have to sing again, or he'll wake up soon. So I sat by Ara and whispered his favorite hymn. By the end, he looked young and calmer than I'd ever seen. I wondered if this was how he was supposed to look. How he'd look if he were well and we lived in a bright, fair world. Then I set off for the witch. The little dog followed, hesitant. The sight made me smile. You want to help, too? Then come on. For the first time ever, he wagged his tail at me and came running. Ami was right. Now that I knew what I was looking for, I saw the shards of past crystal balls shining in the earth, marking the path clear as clean water. Together, the dog and I crossed the creek and the forest and the fields. We even evaded slave catchers. They were drunk, so it was easy. The hardest part was keeping my dog quiet. Once they moved on, we kept going across the river and deep into the hills, following the crystal splinters glimmering in the moonlight. As the moon set, a house appeared on far a hill. Stark and dark against the bright white moon. All the windows were full of light. I continued up the path. It was covered in shattered crystal now. It shone like starlight, like Ami's tears. I entered the garden. It was worse than Ami said, twisted and rotten yet alive, pulsating stalks twisting up to the sky. Slick, decaying blooms glinted unwholesomely. Like pieces of dead bodies twisted and tortured out of their natural resting state into something corrupt, neither alive nor dead. I wanted to cry, but the dog licked my hand. He made me brave enough to square my shoulders and march up that glimmering path. When I reached the porch, the lights in the windows got brighter, then darker. Like the inside had gone from daylight to dusk, I tried the door, praying it was locked, but it creaked open. I heard music inside, a twisted-up rotten kind that made my skin tight and my inside shivery. I recognized it, a broken, corrupt version of what wondrous love is this. I almost ran, but then I thought of Ara, and kept on. The entrance hall was lined with open doors. Light flickered in the rooms, pale and blue. Dark shadows moved within. I didn't dare look closely. I marched down. The little dog padded at my side, alert and stiff, the picture of bravery. Despite everything, I smiled. We entered a parlor lined with shelves on one end and monsters on the other. As I saw the monsters, the stench hit me. Solid as a wall, too thick to breathe until my brain caught up and realized it wasn't a wall, just air. Corrupt air filled with corrupt music. The monsters had the heads of men, sometimes the chests, and sometimes the legs. But they had the parts of animals, too. Wolves, coyotes, eagles, pumas, bears. Someone had made them this way. Someone had torn apart human beings and living animals and put them back together in corrupt ways to go with the corrupt air and corrupt music. I couldn't look at them, not the dead eyes or the slick flesh where rot had settled in, so I turned, and I saw the shelves, so many, each littered with small crystal balls in broken lines like a gap-toothed smile. Most glistened dimly, like the milky eyes of the dead. I knew, somehow, that these were empty. No future inside, and certainly no wish, but a few shone like fire, and one like a coppery winter sunset. I liked it best. Others looked like the moon, beautiful, but too close to the dull color of the dead ones. One looked like the sun. I knew if I touched it it would hurt. Two on the very end were green as pond water in the summer sun. I put them in my pocket. Those don't belong to you. I was so scared I nearly died. There she was, sitting in a chair against the moonlit window, shrouded in shadow. My dog stepped in front of me, hackles going up. They don't belong to you either. Laughter, awful laughter that slithered around the rotten strains of music. They belong to my friend, I said. You stole them. What a good friend, sending a tiny girl to the monster's den. My little dog growled, you came for your brother. Your big brother. Your sick, mad brother who wants to die, and will. You want to wish him better. Yes. The wishes are gone. I wasted them all on my son. There is only the future now that no one wants to see. Yours is darker than mine. You're lying. Why would I lie? Because you're a witch. Silence, then more awful laughter. I wish I were a witch. I'd have magic. I'd have power. I have nothing. Take your friend's eyes. Take your future. Learn to live in darkness. I scanned the shelves, all that dead milky dimness broken here and there with shades of fire. Take them now before my son smells you and your beautiful brother. He'll know what you are. You won't leave alive. Neither will your dog. He got away once. He won't get away again. I grabbed the coppery crystal ball that looked like a winter sunset on a frozen lake. Don't have to break it open, she said. It's such a pretty thing. The only pretty thing you'll ever have. Why ruin it when I can tell you what it says? It says you can't help your brother. He's done. He's been done since before either of you were born. I knew she was telling the truth. That truth, more than any fear, made me run, out of the parlor, down the hall with its flickering dead light, past the door and through her hideous garden as the corruptim chased me into the night. I reached the lightning-struck tree before sunrise. The creature was waiting for me, long spindly fingers tapping. I dug out the pond-green orbs and placed them on its narrow palm. You did it, it breathed, the hand retreated into the darkness. I heard wet clacking sounds, then a pale, smiling face glimmered out of the darkness. It was beautiful. A woman's, fine-featured and heart-shaped, with eyes green as a sunlit pond. Let's help your brother, she said. We reached the creek at dawn. Ara was still asleep. Ami sat with him, starry tears streaking his face. The lightning tree woman crawled to Ara. I held my breath. My heart ached, it ached all the worse when her smile faded, but I wasn't surprised. The witch told the truth. I knew it in my heart and every other part of me. I knew she wanted to streak off into the dawn forest to forget us all in favor of the sights she'd been denied so long. Instead, she crawled to me. I can't help you. His fate was written before time began. So was yours. What are those fates? My voice was thick with tears, her eyes were hypnotic, sunlit reed water boiling me alive. He rots before winter. You die before spring. You were both dead before you were born. Then she slithered off. I tried to be brave. If I cried I'd wake up Ara. And for what? To admit I'd failed. That I wasn't just his curse, but his death too. I walked resolutely to Ara, gripping the coppery crystal ball so hard I thought my knuckles would break. I took deep breaths. Deep, deep breaths to swallow my sobs, but they came right back up again, bringing every part of me up with them. I sat clumsily as tears flooded. It's my fault. He ran away because of me. Now he's going to die because of me. Maybe not. Maybe. Ami said, but his expression told me everything. It's true, I whispered, not because I was trying to be quiet but because I hurt too badly to speak. Everything they said is true. It's the truth, but only half. The other half of the truth is this: where there's a shadow, there's light. The other side of despair is joy. And at the very end of all things, every shadow in the witch's truth, every bit of your pain and suffering and hopelessness and despair will transform into something so beautiful that it will all be worth it. I promise, it will be worth it. I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't. I smashed the coppery crystal ball, then buried my face in my hands and wept. Ara slept through it. When he finally woke, he looked tireder than ever. After we ate a meal of wild berries, Ami became still. What's wrong? Ara asked. For the third time, Ami raised his blindfold. A shadow smells you, Senna. A hungry shadow that stinks of blood. It's the witch's son. You have to go, Ara. You have to take her and run. Ara didn't hesitate. He took me and our little dog and ran. We ran all day and night, until we reached a little hollow under the roots of an ancient tree. Ara tucked me inside and stayed out to keep watch. I slept and dreamed of the lightning-struck tree. Only this time I was inside it, blind and full of rage, smiles splitting my face as the smell of a young child wafted on the breeze. When I woke, Ara was mumbling and crying, so I sang to him. When I got to the lines that went, "To bear the dreadful curse for my soul," I cried with guilt. I was Ara's curse. He bore that curse on his own soul. And for what? For what? The song put him to sleep. I tried to keep watch, but I nodded off too. I had a nightmare that wasn't a nightmare. I knew it as surely as I knew the witch had told the truth. In the dream that was no dream, Ara stood before a man with a bloody mouth and bright flat eyes. He grinned so wide I saw all his teeth and a dead, glistening heart pulsing in his mouth. That heart was the same color as the dead milky crystal balls. "My mother told me you came," he rasped. "But she didn't have to. I smelled you and your beautiful brother. I took him with me, but I couldn't take you. He made it so I couldn't see you or smell you, so you have to come to him on your own. When I let you wake, come and save him, just like he'd save you." I woke screaming. The sky was dark, the moon bright. Ara was gone, and so was my dog. I saw familiar glimmers of shattered crystal embedded in the earth. These weren't milky. They were the color of a winter sunset on an icy lake. I don't know if the witch's son laid that path, or if I did. All I know is I followed it through the fields and the forest, back to our creek. There was no sign of Ara, but our little dog was there, panting. I picked him up and marched on. Dawn broke. Morning slid into afternoon. The daylight deepened and chilled. As the sun sank, the witch's house appeared, high on its hill. I left the dog by the garden gate. "You wait here. If I'm not back by midnight, or if the witch's cannibal son comes, you run away. You run away and find a nice family and forget all about Ara and me." I passed under the gate and went up the path. No longer milky white, but pure copper fire. The color of the future I'd chosen, that gave me strength. I marched into the house and down the entrance hall. The doors were open, but the rooms were empty. No flickering light, no shifting forms, but the smell, that corrupt, suffocating wall of smell, was beyond imagining. It didn't stop me. Nothing would stop me. I was prepared to fight for Ara no matter the cost, so I marched into the parlor lined with dark futures and rotting monsters and dead wishes. All of it flooded with coppery sunset light, and there he was. My brother. My Ara, parts of him, his head, with a wolf's snout sewn on. His chest attached to the arms of a bear, and his hips stitched to the haunches of a mountain lion. On his back were wings. 6 great drooping black wings, glossy dark feathers reflecting the copper sunset. The color of our future. I fell to my knees and stared into his eyes. Dull and cloudy, milky, glistening like the dead things they were. I did not move, not even when my dog nudged my hand with his wet nose and whined, not when he nipped my heels, not when footsteps echoed, not when those steps stopped behind me, not when strong hands hauled me to my feet. Not when those hands spun me around to face the man from my nightmare, the witch's cannibal son at last. "I've been waiting for you," he said. "For both of you, since before any of us were born." Then he sliced me across both palms and led me to my brother. No, I wanted to say. No. More corruption. More curses, but I was too frightened and too small to stop him smearing my bloody hands on Ara's face, his shoulders, his haunches, and each of his glossy black wings, reflecting the copper of the sunset. My blood dripped down him in tiny rivers, pattering to the floor like teardrops. When I could no longer stand, I knelt and began to sing my brother's hymn. I did not stop when the witch's cannibal son laughed. I did not stop when he, too, knelt before the corrupted glory he had made of my brother. I did not stop when my brother's new body shuddered to life. I did not stop when his wings spread and cast great dark shadows across me. I did not stop when he tore off the head of the witch's son. I did stop when he roared at me, his eyes, one his own, familiar and dark, the other molten copper, glared at me. No love, no recognition. Only hate and hunger. I waited for him to tear my head off, too. He roared again, so loud my head split and my ears sang, and ran. I wanted to follow, but my blood kept dripping. I was afraid it would touch the monsters arranged along the wall. I was more afraid it would touch the witch's son. I was too tired either way. I curled up and slept. I woke alone, with bandaged hands. I have no way of knowing, but I think the witch did that before her end. I found her upstairs, far from my pooling blood, holding the headless body of her son. Exhausted and lightheaded, I stumbled out of the house with my little dog in tow. The garden was no longer monstrous. Just dead and tired, and there was no path, milky white or copper or anything else. I stumbled down to the forest. I don't know what I planned to do, but when I reached the trees, I opened my mouth and sang my brother's hymn. Nothing. I started again. At the end of the first chorus, something shifted in the trees. My voice crumpled into a shriek. I kept singing anyway. To God and to the Lamb, there, a single fiery eye burning in the shadowed trees like an ember. I will sing, I will sing. He crouched and slithered forward. To God and to the Lamb, I will sing. Not slithering, prowling. Belly to the ground, quick and jarringly graceful as a mountain lion. To God and to the Lamb, who is the great I Am. My shrieking broke down into sobs as he came close, so close, too close. While millions join the theme, I will sing, I will sing. He drew up to his full height, wings blocking the stars. While millions join the theme, he reached out a great, monstrous arm to tear my head off. Terror and relief crashed over me. I would be gone, no longer a curse. He would be free, truly free. He pulled me in and crushed me to him, but not to kill me, to hug me. I have never wept like I did then. I will never weep like that again. After weeping, we slept a long time. Ami came when we woke and exclaimed how lovely Ara was, how powerful, how beautiful his wings. Strong now, so strong, he was. Ara was so strong now that nothing could hurt him, and because nothing could hurt him, nothing could hurt me. We hurt other people. They deserved it. They were just slavers. That's what Ara said, they're just slavers. That's what we do to slavers. I was happy when you found me. I believed you when you said we would be safe. And you didn't lie, not exactly. But Ara and I ran away to keep them from draining my blood and using it for themselves. We went through it all just to end up where we started. I hear things I'm not supposed to. That's how I know you're trying so hard. You're trying to do good all the time. You do good a lot of the time, but not for me. You take the good I make and give it to everyone else. That's what Ara said last time you let me see him. You know what else he said? That's what slavers do, Senna. They're just slavers, and you know what we do to slavers.
Until next time, subscribe to stay up to date with all updates. No screamers or shocking moments, only comfort and safety. Bye.